Welcome to Not Going Quietly, the podcast where we inspire growth, beat down biases, and get into all sorts of good trouble, with co-hosts Jonathan Beal and Britt East.
No topic is off limits as we explore ways to help everyone leap into life with a greater sense of clarity, passion, purpose, and joy.
So get ready to join us for some courageous conversation, because Not Going Quietly starts right now.
Hey everyone, welcome to Not Going Quietly, the podcast for outraged optimists and heartbroken healers all over the world, where we surface life's searing truths in the name of radical togetherness. I'm so thrilled today to have Case Erickson on the show as our featured guest. I can't wait to delve in and explore all sorts of juicy topics. Jonathan's out sick today, so it's just me, but we're going to get rocking and rolling with Case here. Let me read you his bio. He's an amazing guy, done some absolutely extraordinary stuff. As a gay father, author, and TEDx speaker who came out of the closet after 14 years of marriage, as well as overcame substance abuse and lost 40 pounds after selling 3 restaurants and getting divorced, Case Erickson marries his passion for business, authenticity, and health to empower entrepreneurs to cause more freedom and authentic power in their lives and careers. His holistic business meets life coaching practice aligns marketing and sales development strategies with health and wellness goals, which create authentic, courageous business leaders who forge the way to a braver tomorrow. Challenging them to come out of whatever closet of fear they have, no matter what their sexual orientation. Wow, Case, I can't wait to hear more about all of that and as well as talk about your book. But first of all, how the hell are you doing today?
I am good. It's just one of these transition days and, one day at a time days and feeling blessed days and what the hell is happening days. And I love that, that we're getting a chance to connect. It's been a hot minute. Yeah. And so I'm just feeling more blessed than frazzled. I'm going to be headed out of town here shortly for a wedding this weekend. Not mine yet. But yeah, I'm really excited to connect with you. And what did you say? The heartbroken healers
and outraged optimists.
I love that.
Case,
I love that.
I think you just described modern life in the United States of America. Like we're all a little bit crazy, a little bit frazzled, tired, and, taking it one day at a time. Life in the pandemic plus capitalism plus straight supremacy, racism, everything else we're living with. It's no joke. But I want to show those folks who are watching us on YouTube. I have a copy of Case's book right here. I'm putting in front of the camera. It's such a friggin' good book. It's got so much wisdom and helpful guidance in here that I kind of want to delve further. It's called Coming Out by Going In for those of you just listening to audio. And part of what you do, Case, in this book is you recount your life growing up in a religious family as not exactly gay, but quote unquote straight with a problem, which just has cracked me up for weeks and weeks. What do you wish that little boy would have known at the time when he was growing up?
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I don't mess around.
I was just talking to my, what's that?
I don't mess around. I'm going straight in. I'm going straight in. I don't mess around with my questions.
I thought I heard you say it's okay to mess around. I'm like, that was a good one. I would have told don't feel bad for fooling around with your friends in 2nd and 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th grade. But yeah, I was just talking to my partner the other day about, we talk about it frequently, the impact of religious trauma and the narrative that I was subject to, as a, prepubescent / pubescent child in the church, in the Southern Baptist, Southern evangelical, in the really the height of the AIDS crisis in the 80s. So, in early 90s. And so this is what God does to the gays, like from the pulpit. I didn't get it from my house so much, growing up, I wasn't, it was kind of like, looking back, I'm, in 3rd grade asking my mother for a perm because I have a crush on Tom Selleck. So it's like, And God bless my mom. She got me a perm. I was like, Mom, why did you get me a perm? For God's sakes. I was in third grade. She's like, well, I just wanted you to have one. So it's just, I was definitely one of those typical creative, artistic, loved music and dance and gymnastics and, expressive and, kind of checked off all the boxes of your stereotypical gay kid. However, I was being subject to every Sunday. We went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. I went to Christian private school 5 days a week. We had chapel once a week there and then Bible class every day. And so, and all the teachers were in that, political, moral majority narrative. Mm-hmm. And so it was pray for our country, because the belief or the fear was, if this happens, then what's next? We gotta, this is what happens, it's all Old Testament God, and, God's wrath and all these things. So it was a lot of fear, a lot of fear mongering. And so when my feelings and I have crushes on other boys in my class and, so it's just like, oh my God, like it was just a lot of fear. Like God's going to get me, I'm going to die. I'm going to go to hell because that's what was being programmed into me. That was just everyone else's opinions, my authority figures' opinions. And as a child, we aren't really wired to be able to really deconstruct and logically think and question authority in the way that we are as adults. Or at least this was my perspective and my upbringing. I mean, particularly in the Christian tradition, which is, God, man, woman, children. And so that is the order. You don't question. It's all about obedience, all about falling in line, all about, all of the things. So there was really no questioning allowed. So 27-minute answer to your question, I would tell that boy that, it is 100% fine to love who you love. And the grown-ups in your space that, are in your churches and in your schools and maybe even your parents, they're all very, very afraid. They are, so the best thing you can do is just be yourself, be bravely yourself, love them, love yourself, and be compassionate to people who are afraid, because now I believe that a lot of the construct of that narrative of that particular religious facet, I'll call it, of Christianity. I don't have a big agenda to bring Christianity down on the whole, but like that whole facet, evangelicalism and, the fundamentalist, is very, very, it's a foundation of fear. And for me now, I tell people the book is a lot about coming out of religion just as much as it is coming out of the closet. And so for me now, I still have this, I tell people I'm kind of like a spiritual atheist, believing that all is one. And we're all just energy and we're all just multifaceted little fractals of God, source, love, whatever you want to call it. I do believe that love is at the core and love is greater than fear. And so really that's the biggest impact that I would tell. And I try to do to my kids now is just, there's nothing to fear, really giving them some tools to kind of reframe their relationship with fear. And so not to put fear in the driver's seat. So that's what I would tell.
That's really beautiful. I mean, I think that would help a lot of kids out there. And I love that you're now getting to convey that message to your own children. And, as you describe in the book, part of your journey was that at one point in your life, you married a woman and had kids, and there are so many gay men in the community out there with similar journeys. What gets driven so much in the mass media narrative cliche about gay people is, that we are all single, young urban professionals living in major metropolitan areas, no kids, just lots of affluence and disposable income and partying all the time. And really, there's no one way to be gay. And there's so many gay guys out there who were married to women and have children, similar journeys. So I'm really glad people are getting to know this story. And that's one of the things we try and do on this show is highlight different ways to be gay and all the different forms out there. But I guess my question to you is, how is your experience of being that closeted little boy with all of the religious trauma you just recounted? How's that informed the way you parent your children?
How has that informed the way I parent my children? Well, I believe that at our core, most parents, even the fundamentalist ones, they want to do a better job than their parents did. Of course there's exceptions to every rule. You've got your, dysfunctions and your addicts and all these other things. But for the most part, most parents want to do better for their children than they received. And so, my thing has just been like, just be yourself, whatever. I've been very encouraging of whatever their self-expression is, even though, and it's interesting what I have found in my I'll say fundamentalist programming, because I do believe that when we just are programmed that this is the way that life is. We don't question it when we're young. We're just sponges and taking in, this is reality. This is the world, even though it's not the world. It's just our world, my world. And so I noticed when I started really deconstructing my faith coming out of, I came out when I was 19. I confessed of my demon when I was 19, my shadow, my darkness, my cross to bring to Jesus. It was kind of like this same sex attraction and this struggle. And it's like, there was always this desire to be authentic in some way, shape, or form. So not to hold anything back. So, I knew that the impact of it was that it was kind of like hindering myself, just my happiness, really. And so at the time I thought, nobody's gay, everybody's born straight. And if you have gay feelings, that's just your same sex attraction. So I definitely bought into the whole reparative therapy, that whole narrative, what did your mom, you had the overbearing mom and the emotionally absent father. And I'm like, oh yeah, I check off all those boxes and that's why I'm gay. So, it was a big process of, kind of coming to different levels of authenticity. So it was 19, I made my confession. I thought I was going to be single and celibate and all the things. Then started fooling around with my this girl who liked me. And I'm like, what? You like me? You want to be more than friends? Okay, we can fool around. She was the first one that I really fooled around with. And then she fell in love. And then I was like, oh my God, we're having sex. We have to get married now or else God's going to get God sends the gays to hell. And if you have premarital sex, he's going to withhold your blessing. You're not going to have the favor of the Lord if you're a little slut. So you need to get married. So, I told my, she was then my girlfriend. I'm like, I used to think I'm gay, but I guess I'm not anymore. I don't know. I felt the need to confess. I was only 20 at the time. And so I believe that was true. She believed that was true. And then, we were married for a couple of years. And then, of course, shocker, I'm still attracted to the people I'm attracted to. It was not taken away. And so it just started down a long road of dysfunction for probably 12 years after that, before I finally got to the point where I was like, I'm not, honestly, I had a big crisis of faith through some work that I was doing with a personal and professional development program where, I really had to take on this notion that I was perfect, whole, and complete. And I'm like, what? That's the whole reason I have this faith. I'm broken. I'm shattered. I'm a mess. And And, when I was probably 35, that was the first time when, I was really seeking, who God was to me at the time, who Christ was. And now it's like Christ consciousness, love, acceptance, all those things, social justice. That's to me what Christ consciousness represents. And so, it was like I was reading the parable of Jesus healing the cripple at the pool of Bethesda. And he basically broke the law that day. You weren't allowed to heal people and you weren't allowed to carry anything. And he was like, carry your shit and get out, to the cripple. And I was just like, for whoever God was or Christ was for me at the time, I felt like he cared more about me being happy, just me, like, than whatever the law said, whatever all these other people in the Bible interpreted what the law. And so that was the first time that I actually felt okay to be gay. Like, and it wasn't like I was straight with the problem. I was like, oh God, like, so I'm gay, at 35, and that was the first time where I was like, if it's okay for me to be gay, why am I married? Why do I have a wife? And let's start deconstructing that, and let's start getting clear on that. And so that kind of started the whole process of, kind of the journey of this new level of authenticity, I'll call it. So I know I went on like 27 different rabbit holes there, and I don't feel like I answered your question because I don't fully remember what it was.
No, you're great. You've brought up several threads I want to kind of get through. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be traumatized by religious organizations and systems of power. Mm-hmm. And I wonder what you might, like those of us who have experienced that trauma, to know about spirituality and God.
The only thing that's coming up for me right now is, to me, like, this belief that, we are part of something greater, and that greater thing is a part of us. It's in us. It expresses itself through us, and it is good. It is loving. It is kind. It is supportive. When I look and, just kind of zoom out and realize that we're sitting on a big ball of floating molten lava in the middle of nowhere, and yes, nature is exceptionally chaotic. And it is also, and so, I look at these kind of systems of nature and feel like that this is a supportive system that we're in. There is organization, there is structure. To me, it is a very hard leap, even though I, understand the notion of, there's no God per se, there's no separate entity. So, I kind of pick and choose the words that I was I have a lot of biblical scripture that's just been ingrained in me, and so it's like, I have to reframe it, or I have reframed it through the lens of love. And so, because that to me feels good. I question, do I want to believe something that feels good, or do I want to believe something that doesn't feel good? So I believe that, we all believe in something, even believing that there is nothing is a belief in something. So, I choose to believe that we all, parts of, Christ's message that, let them be one as you and I are one. So it's like, okay, what if we really were one? What if we really were all connected? And I use that as the frame or the lens of, and even looking at scientifically, like quantum theory and all these, entanglements and this weird, crazy shit that we don't even know. We do not even know the degree of connectedness that we are, and the reality of that our current human experience is very, very, very much an illusion inside the world of separation. So I've just done a lot of research and listened to a lot of works, Neville Goddard, Florence Scovel Shinn, Alan Watts. Those are the main, of course, Wayne Dyer was a really big one, spiritual people who kind of use these spiritual principles of love and energy and light and these types of things that resonated with me, that I'm like, okay, that's going to help me. I am done. And it's honestly like a daily choice, still, because that's why I'm like, I need meditation. I need yoga. I need proper nutrition. I need proper sleep. I need a lot of shit to like human. And that's okay. It got me to, it took me a hot minute to not make myself wrong for that, to not make myself weak for that. It's just, sometimes it's more challenging for other people to actually get up and do the thing that is life. And so for me, I have a lot of tools in my arsenal, and I can feel like when any of those tools is off, I feel it. I start to kind of assume the worst, or, get into a fear-based mindset, or, any of those things. So for me, it's about just bringing back to love, because I choose to believe that, because it just feels better than not. So that's what I would say to anybody who is kind of, has gone through that religious trauma, just to acknowledge that is a human opinion that someone stated as fact. And so, everything is an opinion. Even what I'm saying right now is an opinion. It is my truth today. It might not even be my truth tomorrow, because my truth has changed so much. So I don't even my own truth, I'm not like, in my book, I wrote pre-pandemic, so I wrote my book pre-pandemic. I wrote, pre-pandemic and pre-loss of my business. I lost a large portion of my festival event production business. I went homeless for a little bit. And so all those things really changed me a lot. So sometimes I'll read my book and be like, I don't agree with myself. Like, I don't agree all the way with myself now. So I don't, so it's in looking back and realizing that truth is malleable, it's changeable, it's relative, it's subjective. And acknowledge that, okay, thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, pastors in my past. Thank you, religious leaders. Thank you, religious teachers. Thank you, Bible teacher, for this and Bible teacher for that. And I no longer believe that your opinion is my truth, because their opinion is just their opinion, and it's not the guiding light for my life. Because when I took on their opinion as the truth for how my life should go, I was suicidal. So I'm not going to do that anymore. But it's a daily acknowledgement of what the default is, because the default is a lot of fear-based. The fear is the comfort. The brain wants to be afraid. The brain wants to stay small. The brain just kind of, it's got special needs for sure. All of our brains. And so, yeah, I just, kind of reframe. I've done my best to try to reframe any possible religious narrative into one that really supports me and my children and my loved ones around me.
You have so many gifts. You're so smart. You're so funny and relatable, and you're so relentlessly honest. I really adore that about you. Like, it's so empowering to hear, like, oh, wow, somebody else has experienced the dark night that I've experienced, the depths of despair that maybe I've experienced, and, and is still wrestling with demons every day, and still wrestling with life struggles and journey every day, and has a pragmatic array of tools and techniques to stay afloat, to meet the moment in whatever it requires, and to go forth and love others. And I just think that people who read this book and who listen to you and are going to feel so inspired by that relentless honesty. So here's my question after that build up.
I know. You're like, basically, I can't lie. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Continue.
So now you have to tell me the truth. Have you ever sat down with any member of your family, your loved ones, your former congregation that you might want to remain close to, and ask them to consider, and I mean really consider, what their homophobic choices have cost you, and what they might feel compelled to do with that information?
Well, okay. So I might have told you this, but I know I didn't say this. I don't think I've said this yet today. My mother worked for televangelist Pat Robertson for 23 years. And so she worked there after I graduated high school. I went to Liberty University, good old Jerry Falwell, and this good old sidebar. Have you seen God Forbid on Hulu?
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, so good. Anyway, we could go on a whole tangent for that.
Yeah.
But, so I got married when I was a sophomore in college because that's what I thought you did. And that's, what good Christian boys do and that whole stuff. So, and during that time and really the large majority of my married time, my mother was working for Pat Robertson. So of course, Pat Robertson was like wrath of God, the gays brought on Hurricane Katrina. He's stated these really, really extreme things to where I was just like, oh my God, how can my mother, but like, I just like let my mom be, I didn't want to cause any big things and be like, why aren't you changing? And oh, this is the point I wanted to make before when I was talking about the fundamentalist programming. Now, coming out of fundamentalism, coming out of this religious narrative into more, kind of new thought, new age, woo woo, whatever you want to call it. I noticed my propensity to want to be right in that space, which is very fundamentalist. So it doesn't matter what you believe. If you are staunchly in the thing of like, I'm on the right side, you're on the wrong. Like, oh, you believe X, Y, and Z, you're wrong now, I'm right. Well, I'm not really different. While the, shit may have prettier packaging, it's still shit once you open it up. So, this desire and this propensity to be right is like, it's a killer, man. It is a fucking killer. And to really like let go of the desire to be right, meaning you have to allow the other person to be right. And so, it was always kind of like a sidesteppy conversation or topic with my mom, partly because she worked there. So when she retired, I think she retired a little bit before the pandemic, somewhere in 2020. And so there was a part of me that was like, oh, now mother is going to see the light and I'm going to show her. So, I kind of took this torch of new age evangelist, and it just backfired like a motherfucker, pardon my language. I really, so that was probably in 2020. She and I have had a very tumultuous, I was always kind of like her right-hand kid, and it's just me and my brother. And, I was definitely the emotional one. Like, tell me about your problems, mom, and my brother was your typical straight, like, what are you, I've got one of those with my son right now. And I don't even know. I can't. But, it got to a point where I was really like, Byron Katie talks about in Loving What Is, and like really shifting this desire that we have, these judgments on other people are really then these triggers are really what our desire for ourselves. So to let, mom, why aren't you the advocate? Don't you see this and don't you see in this and don't you see this and don't you see that? And I'm showing her all the statistics and, suicide rates and evangelical. And I don't know if Susan Cottrell with Freed Hearts, if you ever talked to her or heard of her organization. No. She's a really, really great organization that serves parents, Christian parents of LGBT children. So wow. I'm like, and one of her TED Talks is like over 2 million views. And I actually met her. She used to live in Austin, and I met her, and I participated in their faith community for a little while. But her whole stance was, I chose my child over the church. And, she's got all, debunking all the clobber passages. I'm like, it's a mother. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to change mom for sure. She's going to come over to the rainbow for sure. I'm going to connect her to Susan, and Susan is going to show her the light. I give her to the Lord. I give mom to the Lord via Susan. And so, I'm sending mom all the things, and I'm just like, it really became, like I said, it really became that, the stories that you hear of, like, the gay kids and the fundamentalist father, and the father sending them all the reparative therapy, conversion therapy paraphernalia and books and all this stuff. It like really became that kind of new age evangelist pressure to her. And, just got to a point where I was like, okay, this is really my desire, letting my mom off the hook for having to be anyone other than who she is. And, realizing that my desire for her to be more of an advocate for me was my desire to be more of an advocate for me. Like I can barely control myself, much less someone else. You know, the ego on most of us to be like, I can solve this, but I'm going to need to control you first. Or I'm going to need you to come over to this side first. Or, I mean, seriously, you know, it's just absolute insanity. So, you know, she and I have had many conversations around that. And I finally got to the point where it was like, okay, you know, and it's been interesting that I have actually identified more now with the Christ character. And I've reframed a lot of the Bible as a fiction. I mean, the main cue in that is like, it's a story that starts off with a talking snake. So it might not be a literal thing. So I've reframed a lot of the Bible into this, you know, this fiction-based narrative that, you know, just allowing that love to transcend and this love to heal and love to be like the guiding light and, you know, surrender and all these things. And I feel at the same time, I feel persecuted by the people who claim to be followers of God. I'm like, wait, isn't this what Jesus was complaining about? Because all y'all are being all holier than thou. And Jesus is like, I'm going to hang out with this slut real quick because she's way better than y'all. Y'all have messed this the fuck up, you know? And I'm like, oh my God, I get Jesus so much more now that I left Christianity. So anyway, I've tried to be that space of unconditional love, dropping the judgment. You know, the challenge is they do have these belief systems have real life impacts. They have real like this, like I mentioned, the suicidal ideations, the suicide rates are double for LGBT youth. For those who are subject to any kind of reparative fundamentalist conversion therapy type backgrounds, are double for that. For those who have experienced, and I think this was some Equality Texas or some place that noticed this or you know said this, and then but for those kids who were subject to that in their home and when they left. And then if they were subject to that narrative after they left as well, meaning like they were still in the community, they were still getting from church, their risk of suicide was triple that of their heterosexual counterparts. So, you know, it's fine for me to say, oh, it's okay. You know, I love you no matter what. And honestly, that's something I'm still navigating is like, to me, it's kind of like a civil rights issue. It's an educational issue. It's like, do you even understand the impact of what, you know, so there was a lot of defensiveness I feel coming from me. And so I had to go through that journey of release and, you know, okay, you know, give it to God, give it to Jesus, whatever. And really let her have her journey, become more of an advocate for myself. And in that space, you know, probably it took about 10 years. I mean, she came from like, stop saying you're gay. Are you sleeping with, you know, I remember when I first came out and was leaving my wife at the time. And I was like, well, you know, I'm gay, And she's like, why are you saying you're gay? Are you sleeping with men? Or no, she goes, are you having sex with men? I was like, well, no, right now I'm on the phone with you. Like, they're just so like, they don't understand. There's so many synapses that just are not firing inside the context of like orientation and behavior. I mean, oh my God, I feel like, you know, the work can feel overwhelming at sometimes, but anyway, you know, she went from that to now, you know, I've been dating my partner for close to a year. My mom and I have had, you know, one reconciliation after another, probably about I would say 2 or 3 weeks ago. We had a conversation, you know, Tom's my partner's name. And so, you know, I put my mom on the speakerphone and Tom was just talking about how much he loved his mom and how much he wished he could talk to his mom. His mom passed away like 3 years ago. And he was just like, oh my God, my mom was amazing. I just wish I could talk to her. And, you know, it just occurred to me in that moment, I should call my mom, you know, like it'd be not like my mom's still alive. I guess I'll call my mom. So, you know, I called my mom and we ended up having like an 1.5 hour conversation And it was really, really just beautiful and lovely, and to kind of set these things aside and to really hear her love in that. And it's like, it's just been really true. I mean, and then she said, like, she approves of Tom. Like, she was just like, oh, as soon as I met Tom, the first one, I knew Tom was just like a kind and gentle soul. And I was just like holding the phone. I'm like, I don't, like, not that she was ever like that much of a, my father, of course, he was the Marine, the Southern Baptist pastor, Lieutenant Colonel. He and I stopped talking 2 years before he passed away, because he told me that the precursor to the downfall of society is the acceptance of homosexuality. So basically, if I accept you, we're all going to hell in a handbasket. So, he was definitely exceptionally extreme. But my mom definitely came full circle. I mean, it just is like 2-3 weeks ago. So it's very, very new, this land that we're in, and acknowledging that love is the foundation. So if we can remain to the idea that love is the foundation, and if someone is acting, Marianne Williamson talks about this, and I think it's A Return to Love is the book, but Course in Miracles. I mean, it's kind of like a recap in A Course in Miracles, where it says, everything is either a call for love or a call to love. And so I really when I first heard that years ago, I really appreciated that perspective, because, I do think a lot of people's choices and their words and their actions are coming from fear, which to me is the opposite of love. So, it's this whole like, oh, if we approve of homosexuality, then what's next? You're going to be sleeping with your dog, like they go to this like ridiculous extreme, and so now it's like, the gays are kind of allowed. So now we're going to marginalize trans. Like that's we're going to marginalize either Muslim or trans for, people in the evangelical community. And so it's this notion of marginalization that I believe comes from fear. And I don't believe that the foundation of Christ's message was love, which was against fear. It was dropping judgments. It was loving your neighbor as yourself. It was being one. It was being inclusive. And so, my mom just said probably last week, she was talking about, because my daughter's kind of in this, one of her friends is changed their pronouns, and changed their name, and is now kind of like a gender neutral name. And my daughter is kind of in this unisex phase. And, my mom is I can hear it. She's just buying the narrative. It's a fear-based narrative that you see and right-wing conservative media around like, oh, we've got to protect our family, protect our children. They're being given hormones and they're being wrecked. And, just all this stuff that to me is a fear-based foundation. And so I try my best to educate from, it's one of those things where I used to hate when other Christians would be like, I'm just speaking the truth in love. I'm like, no, you're not. You're being a judgmental asshole. So, to not be a judgmental asshole when I'm trying to get people to love one another, like go figure, like that's my plight. So, to me, there is no easy answer. I look to others before me, the Martin Luther Kings, the Gandhis, the people who have, experienced what I'll call civil unrest or a violation of civil rights. And so there's this element of, yes, I can love you and stop beating your child. Just because we put a mandate on you to not, handcuff your child and throw them in the basement, that doesn't mean we don't love you. And so it's like, honestly, I don't know. I mean, for me, that's my next, like, how do I build this bridge? Right. Because I feel like a lot of people in the gay community, men or women or whoever in the gay community that have religious trauma, they want to stay angry. They want to stay resentful. They want to stay in their hate because that is a more comfortable place to be, because that's how they felt about themselves for so long. And it's exceptionally easy to make someone else wrong. And we think that if I love the person who is basically my abuser in some way, shape, or form. I mean, to a large degree, a number of the church communities I underwent spiritual abuse. For someone to put these narratives in, it was abusive to my orientation. It was, and so then this notion of I'm going to love my abuser seems kind of screwed up. And so, it's like, how do you hold these abusers? And I'm using that as a sweeping term. I'm not saying everybody who's Christian or evangelical is abusive, but I'm saying this notion of, you hurt me, I'm not going to love you, I'm not going to forgive you because I don't agree with what you're doing. What you're doing is wrong, and da 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 da. So, that's a reality, like when people are being marginalized. It's like I told my mom the story of the Good Samaritan. For me now is like, I'm like, Mom, it's not about feeding the homeless or taking care, of someone's wounds. Like, look at the people who walked by the person. They were the religious leaders. This person, they weren't allowed to touch. This person was marginalized by the religious community. That's the reason they weren't helping that person. And the person who did was like, fuck church, I'm going to help this person. I'm going to meet their basic needs. So for me, that's like, we're kind of, a lot of people in the LGBT community are in that, particularly the trans right now, are in that like space of being kicked while they're down. And it's not right. So, there's no like magical formula for me to, say, oh, here's how you do it. Here's how you protect those who are, being marginalized, other than, doing all the things, doing the work, doing the aligning with the organizations and, the funding and supporting different political action committees or different community initiatives that foster equality and inclusion, and, trying my best to fight, to fight the fight, but also to just be very clear that I'm doing my best to come from a space of love, to come from a space of inclusion. I always preface anything that I have to say with anybody of any kind of religious background of like, to me, Christ was inclusive. He was an advocate for the marginalized. So I look at who is being marginalized right now and by whom. And I can say that the trans community is being marginalized by the evangelical community. So how am I going to be like Christ today? I'm going to advocate for the marginalized. And just leave it be. And, and it's a lot of the times it's like, I want to like take on all of the world's problems. And like I said before, I can barely control myself. I can barely like manage my own problems, much less the world's. And so I try my best to focus on the relationships that I have in my little nest, with my partner, with my ex-wife, with my 2 kids, with my mom, and tend to those, make sure those people know my heart. Those people know that I'm doing my best to take responsibility for my actions whenever I've been hurtful, to not draw the line in the sand and make myself right, even though I feel like I've seen the light. Be willing to listen. It's kind of like, be willing to understand rather than to be understood. So really learning some tools of conscious conversations, conscious communication. A lot of that's, you kind of saying is biblical too, be slow to speak and quick to listen. That there's some really good universal truths in there that have applied for me in managing the relationships that I've had with the conservative evangelicals and religious people in my past. And I think my mom is the only one left. Everyone else who I was quote unquote friends with, back in my married heterosexual days, air quote heterosexual, when I came out, it was like, oh, okay, we have standards. One of my friends was like, well, we have standards, so you're not really in alignment with, our beliefs. And like, these were people I was friends with, I hung out with, I went to college with, and that just kind of happened across the board. And, I just rationalized it as, well, they weren't friends with, they didn't have a relationship with the real me, And so now it's like, I'm having these relationships from a space of authenticity and, I think I'm really not in relationship with a lot of people in the religious community, other than my mom.
That was a beautiful, beautiful meditation on forgiveness, and a lot of juicy stuff there. And I can't help wondering, in thinking about my own life and things that I struggle with, I can't help but wondering about the forgetting. It's one thing to forgive, to say, I release you, I release me, and approaching relationships and people and situations with a beginner's mind and an empty heart, meaning available to be filled with love. It's another thing, though, to say, I forget, even just for a moment, what transpired between us. And if we are unable to forget or choose not to forget, then we're forced to hold multiple truths at once. You, random person, may have chosen to abuse me in some way in the past. That's one truth. Another truth that you alluded to is there was some brokenness in you that was longing to be loved and steeped in fear and all sorts of needs going unmet. How do you forget? How do you forgive and forget? Is it important to forget, or is that just kind of a cliche that doesn't have any meaning? Is it, how do you hold those truths together simultaneously? Because I think that's where a lot of guys get stuck in the rage. Yes, it's artificially empowering, like you described. You get juiced off of it. You get an adrenaline hit, a serotonin hit, and all that kind of stuff. But some of it too is also, there was nobody in those moments so many years ago to attend to my woundedness, and somehow forgetting, in air quotes, in this moment as adults, in the name of spiritual forgiveness and togetherness, radical togetherness, even somehow that forgetting feels like a betrayal of that little boy or person in that moment. So how do you hold both of those things together?
Well, it's like, I think that you can forget, it's kind of like to me, it's the intention behind the energy, the feeling. When someone says, well, I can forgive, but I don't forget. I'm like, that's holding, like you're holding on, like that's a grudge, and to me, it just kind of comes down to boundaries. And, I've got, do I have it over here? I think it's called, here, I've got it right here. It's The Language of Letting Go. She wrote Codependent No More, and it's daily meditations on codependency. And so today's was beautiful about detachment and really just taking responsibility for our own feeling in the matter. And our own, like, are we the ones who are like attached to this thing? And are we like in the gerbil wheel of suffering because of what someone else did? And so that's like that, like, but at the same time, you're like, well, no, I don't want to forget because they fucked up or they did this and that's not right. And there's a lot of legitimacy in that feeling too, I have to remind myself, like, to not feel guilty over anything. Like, guilt was kind of like the other thing. It was like fear, guilt, shame. I'm like, ooh, this is a good little pie. I'm just going to sit there for a minute. There's so much to unpack there, but not feeling guilty for being angry. And because those feelings are valid. If we are abused, if we are if we are forsaken in some way, shape, or form, how do you detach while also forgiving and loving? And so for me, through my work, I've done a number of work with, 12-step stuff and, all these things is about boundaries and clear communication. So, you can say, and what I have said is like, you know what, this affected me. This is how it affected me. This is how it's also continuing to affect other people. So this is an ideology, or this is a system of behavior, or this is a system of thought. And here's the impact. And what that means for me is that we're not going to have a close relationship, because I am in close relationship with those I'm in alignment with. I am on a mission now to kind of build these bridges and come from a space of love and not a space of fear, and, you know, to really transcend some of these old narratives that I feel were bad for me or were hurtful for me. You know, we don't always have to learn through a large degree of hurt and trauma. Like, we can learn and we can evolve and we can grow. We don't need to like throw ourselves in, you know, down the slide full of like razor blades into like a pool of salt water to know that shit stings. You know, we can get a paper cut and understand what a sting is. So, you know, for me, I feel like we're coming out of this emotional dark age. And so how do I come out of my own emotional dark age while acknowledging that shit is still going on? I've been doing a lot of like looking at a lot of documentaries recently, and, you know, I was kind of in my I'm in a healing bubble right now, and I'm just like tending to myself and, you know, doing all my, like, I'm just going to be here at the healing spa, and, oh, I'm sorry, I kind of see you over there getting beaten and bludgeoned, but I need my rest, you know? And so it's to a point now where it's like, okay, I'm ready to now be more of an advocate than I was before, because I'm, you know, it's kind of like the scriptures that says, you know, fill your cup, you know, may your cup overflow. Like, if my cup is empty, I can't be of service. And so for me, it's about establishing boundaries, being authentic, saying what works, what doesn't work, acknowledging that the other person also has their journey. You know, I you know, in my past and my ex-wife, that's a whole other thing we could talk about forever, but, you know, she has her journey, and, you know, I never want to say, you know, Britt hurt me and he's never going to change because he's just an asshole. You know, so when I create someone in that space based on their past behavior, I give them no space to change in my own personal reality because of the way that I created you for me. So I really kind of had this insight when I got to my father passed away around 4 years ago. It was like a church full of people. I was like, are y'all here for the same guy? Steve Erickson. Did I get the room right? Like, I was like, how does this asshole have any friends? Like, you know, but, you know, it was just a beautiful moment. My brother got up and shared, and then I had an idea of what I was going to share. And then, as my brother was sharing, I was like, oh my God, I cannot share what I was going to share. I got to share something else. What I'm going to share, I'm just going to share whatever comes to my mind. And I don't even remember, like, I was in the flow. I was like talking about love and forgiveness, and, you know, cause I'd done a lot of forgiveness and reconciliation work with my dad, with religion, with big, you know, invisible sky grandpa is what I call him. I'd done a lot of work on that. And so I was just talking about love and forgiveness. And, you know, I didn't come right out and say, so this is a Southern Baptist church that I was at, First Baptist Church, that, I was like, I will only go to church for a wedding or a funeral. And so I was in there, and I was just like, you know, my dad didn't really know what to do with a weird and crazy kid playing with ribbons. And so, like, I didn't really say I was gay, but I did all the gay gestures. So there was no mystery as to what the situation was between me and my dad. You know, but it was a beautiful message on love and forgiveness. And, you know, it's like we can sit and bitch and moan and argue semantics. And at the end of the day, you know, it does take the bigger person to love and to forgive. I don't even remember exactly what I said, but, you know, like people clapped at the end. I was like, who claps at a funeral? I tell that story. So, like, but I don't even remember, like, to me, I was like in the flow. I was in like, you know, I honestly don't remember a lot of what I said, and, you know, it moved, the spirit moved, you know, moved through this little gay version of me in a Baptist church. And so, you know, my dad he participated in a lot of like groups, and one of them was a veterans group. And so this veteran father came up to me after the funeral. He had tears in his eyes, and he showed me a picture of his daughter. And, you know, he said, I haven't talked to my daughter for 2 years, and I just hope that someday she'll be able to forgive me the way that you forgave your father. Wow. And,
jeez,
you know, it was just like very moving and very like, you know, that to me is the energy of it. And we want to sit and argue like this person's wrong and this person does this. And I'm not saying that there aren't some really, really atrocious atrocities going on right now at the hands of many religious institutions, many, government institutions. There's a lot that's wrong with the world, and there's a lot that's right with the world. And so when we can come from a space of honoring the other person's journey, and the whole reason why I told you this story about my dad and the funeral and all these things, is because all those other people had a completely different experience of my father. Completely different experience of my father. And so when we're so married to the experience that we had with one person for our little fraction of a time that we experienced them for, so they hurt us, or they said this, or they did that, or that, and that's just how they are. No, that's not how they are. That's how they are with you, or that's how they were with me. So the only thing I can do, if I want to keep them that, dead or alive, if I want to keep them that perpetuator, that person who hurt me, that person who's unable to change, then I hold on to my grudge. I hold on to my, what the idea that that's just how they are. Or, and this is my journey right now. As I'm yesterday, I was just talking yesterday about this whole issue with my ex-wife. I'm like, I can't, if I hold on to that narrative of that's how she is, she will never, I will never even give her the opportunity to be anyone other than that, And so it's like, you never know, right? Like this whole miracle, like it took 10 years for my mom to get to a place where she's like basically giving me her blessing for Tom and I to be together, which is crazy. That she's gotten to that point and she's just like, chill. I'm like, apparently you needed to get to your 70s to chill out. So, everybody's got their time. Everybody's got their timeline. It's not our job to say how anyone else should live so that we don't have to do our own work with our reaction about it. It's like, oh, I want you to kind of I want everybody to be well behaved because I cannot handle a misbehaving classroom right now. Well, sometimes you're going to get a misbehaving classroom and you have to figure out how you're going to, mitigate that so that you don't lose your shit. So the way that I found not to lose my shit with people who I don't have anything I don't have anything immediately in common with is just let them have their journey. And also establish very, very clear boundaries in terms of what works for me, what doesn't work for me, and be open and honest about my struggles and the impact and the hurt and the suicidal ideations that I went through, that other people are going through right now, presently, and hope that my patience and my love and, this love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control, these are the fruits of the spirit, right? So for me, God is love. And so I'm like, I kind of reframed everything. It's just love, la-di-da, kumbaya. That's great. When I grew up, that passage was that self-control was all about, sexual purity and don't touch yourself. And like, you got to control yourself and control your mind and control your eyes and watch what you're looking at. Da, 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 da. It was not and now the perspective I have is that is self-control, not others' control. So it's self-mastery in the face of all the other people, all the other things we want to control. We want to control the people. We want to control the world. We want to control it all. But that's not real love. Real love is surrender and like letting people go, have their journey, and mastering ourselves and our own emotional reaction in the matter.
Case, I want to know what it has been like to give yourself permission to fall in love with a man and what love to be.
I need a cigarette for that one.
There was some euphoric recall.
I'm like gay Jesus.
Yeah, there was some euphoric recall going on here that people on YouTube will get to witness. So that was great.
Yeah, it's like I always talk about I'm gay Jesus with like a big long looks like cigarette with a big long thing. And I was like, any black high, high heels with the red bottom. That's been a whole other journey. And for me, I have really, it's been a lot of hurt my marriage experienced, multiple betrayals. She had an affair with my best friend for 3.5 years, and then we reconciled. We opened 3 restaurants and had 2 kids within 5 years. And then we moved to Austin, and then I came out, and then she'd fallen in love again. And I guess either had some kind of love affair or whatever. So my conversation, and that to me was all kind of born out of inauthenticity. So when there's infidelity, it's 100% my fault, and it's 100% the other person's fault. So, coming out of blame and coming out of all that. But anyway, I say all that to say my notion of, I had built up this idea, this fantasy, that no one was going to attain ever. And that fantasy was actually what, I was creating as a means to keep myself safe, because I thought that relationships were hurtful and damaging and painful, because that was my experience. Very, very hurtful, very painful, very traumatizing, just so dysfunctional and toxic. And so for me, having this relationship space with this man who I've known for a decade was not like, oh, I saw him from across the crowded room, and I had this Hollywood idea of how it had to be, and that I had this Hollywood idea of how it had to start, and then I had a Hollywood idea of how it had to continue, of like always up here, and this like literal impossible standard of perfection that no one, not even myself, could attain. And the reason I had that standard was because I was doing everything in my power to keep myself safe, because I thought that single equaled safe. And so when I really started, and God bless my partner, he is like the patience of a saint. It's just, it just makes me love him more. Oh my God. When we really started, kind of detoxing all these things. And like I said, I incorporated everything that I just said. I incorporated into my dating experience with Tom, because like it didn't start, and it was like, I mentioned the homeless thing. I started like, I was hustling for a little while and rebuilding my business, and I was giving massages. I'm like, I'm watching dogs, I'm watching houses, I'm giving massages, I'm cleaning. What do you need? I got you. Like I'm a hustler, I'm an entrepreneur. I know how to do what I need to do. So I'm like, oh my God, like, is this like a, Richard Gere, Julia Roberts situation here? I'm down for it if it is. But so for me, it's been like this deep, authentic connection, because I am just like, I was so willing to, not have it all figured out, to be like, I don't know. Like, I thought I was going to know, like I was going to have this big brick hit me over, despite all the other things in the world where I'm like, Alan Watts calls this the wisdom of insecurity. And so like really being alive is just an immense amount of uncertainty. We're not certain, we're not secure, there's all these things coming at us. And so it was through my willingness to be scared, to be vulnerable, to be authentic, to not be certain, to really traverse these planes of a relationship where it's like, oh shit, I think I'm in love. Like, and it's not like the way that I thought it was going to go. And it's really been beautiful, because we have this safe container where I can be a hot mess. He can be a hot mess. We can both be hot messes together, and, really getting out of this world of judgment and fear. And it's been a lot of work. And, I knowing myself now, I wouldn't have done it any other way. I wouldn't have done it like the whole like brick hitting me. I just, the Hollywood version, because to me, it's just so much more substantive to have this partnership and this like safe place and this like raw and this like compliment. He's like kind of very introverted, behind the scenes. Kind of like, the spotlight operator. And I'm like, who has my spotlight? I need a spotlight, And so And there's no competition there between us. There's no competition. There's only compliments. We complement each other, and we have very, very similar values. And, he's entrepreneurial and he has kids himself. And so we have a lot of common things in common that, and obviously, he's all about work going, coming out of trauma and, all the stuff that we talk about and trying to make the world a better place. He's about as well. So to answer your question, it's very surreal to me. Like, I'm still like, now it's like, am I going to let myself be happy? Ooh, I don't know. I'm happy. And then I'm like, oh, wait, don't get too happy because that'll really fuck it up. So it's this whole still comes up. Like, I'm comfortable in suffering. I'm comfortable. Well, let's just say I'm more familiar with suffering. More familiar with, these other dramatic roads. And then it's like, ooh, I can be happy. And then I'm like, ooh, I'm going to feel bad about being happy real quick.
Oh my God.
I'm going to feel bad about having this, that, or the other thing. Yeah. And so that's what I've been coming out of is just like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to feel bad anymore. And I'm going to acknowledge there's a part of me that thinks it should feel bad. What is that part of me that thinks it should feel bad? Oh, the part that thinks there's something wrong with it. Oh, like there's nothing wrong with it. Like, you can be happy. Let yourself be happy. Be in the present moment. In the present moment, there's nothing, it's all temporary. This too shall pass, good or bad. Really relish the good and, and let go of the bad. And, in that space, acknowledge that, this is life and this is what it is. And how can I be of service? How can I use all the gifts and talents and abilities that I have, and the place that I find myself? How can I use that to better the world, further equality, end injustice, even if it's in my own little space, own little world, own little relationship. Mm-hmm. So it's a very, to answer your question, a very exciting, surreal, blessed, fortunate, and grateful time for me.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I have learned so much from our conversation today. You've given me so much to think about, and I'm so thrilled that we are getting the chance to introduce you to our audience. And I hope everybody runs out and buys your book. It's absolutely incredible. We're going to include links in the show notes to Case's socials and where you can find the book and all that, so you don't have to jot things down. It'll be in the show notes, and I encourage everyone to check it out. Case, you just keep fighting the good fight. I'm just cheering you on the whole way. I think you're doing amazing work. It's so fun to watch it all unfold, and to be a big cheerleader of yours. And I just I'm just blown away by your journey. Thank you so much for being on our show today.
Yeah, thank you, Britt. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, dear listeners, you have made it through another episode of Not Going Quietly. We're so thankful and grateful for your presence. Please let us know what you think of the show. Drop us a line. And, we've got a lot of great guests lined up for you coming up. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I learned a ton, like I said, and I can't wait to share this conversation with the world. So everybody, take care of yourselves. Be blessed, have a great day, and be well. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Not Going Quietly with co-hosts Jonathan Beal and Britt East.
Thanks so much for joining us on this wild ride as we explore ways to help everyone leap into life with a greater sense of clarity, passion, purpose, and joy.
Check out our show notes for links, additional information, and episodes located on your favorite podcast platform.